Movies touch our hearts and awaken our vision, change the way we see things. They take us to other places. They open doors and minds. This is a quote from the filmmaker Martin Scorsese, and I will be speaking about him tonight. Widely considered one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, his career spanned over 5 decades, and it's had highs and lows. He's influenced filmmakers past, present, and most likely future. Today, I will inform you of his filmography, the controversies with some of his films, and the influence he's put on filmmakers. As a young boy growing up in Queens, New York, in a tough neighborhood and dealing with physical limitations, Scorsese found refuge in the movie theater. As he explains in Richard Schinkel's Conversations with Scorsese, my asthma isolated me from everybody else. And so in isolation, I was made to think that I couldn't do anything physical. So the ritual of going to the movies with your father, didn't matter what the film you saw, became important to me. There was a sense of peace there. The films of those of his childhood has influenced him now, from 8½, Red Shoes, to The Searchers, to Vertigo. After graduating from NYU in 1969, he made his first feature film, professional feature film, Who's Knocking at the Door. It wasn't a success at all. No one really saw it. It was low box office, but it gave him credibility and made him popular with his peers in filmmaking, such as Francis Ford Coppola and his good friend Steven Spielberg. After making a few minor films for studios that weren't personal for him, he decided to write his first screenplay, Mean Streets. It was an important moment in his film history because this is when he met Robert De Niro, who became a longtime collaborator with him. Their friendship and partnership has been considered one of the most fruitful partnerships in film history. 3 years later, they would come together again, doing Taxi Driver. This is a pivotal movie and a breakout movie for Martin Scorsese, and it's considered one of the greatest films in history. It was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Actor for Robert De Niro, but oddly enough, Scorsese wasn't nominated for his amazing direction in filmmaking. In 1980, they would do Raging Bull, which was another landmark in their films together, De Niro and Scorsese. It's widely considered the greatest film of the 1980s. The black and white film depicts the life of Jake LaMotta, a professional boxer with rage issues, and depicts the realistic ugliness of him as a person. The film was also nominated for several Oscars. Robert De Niro won Best Actor for his alteration and character that we've never seen in film. Sadly, again, Scorsese lost Best Director. In 1990, Scorsese and De Niro teamed up once again, making Goodfellas, which is considered one of the greatest gangster films of all time. Again, nominated for several Oscars, and again, Scorsese doesn't win. Through the years, through the 90s and the early 21st century, we started seeing that his effect on the generations after him influenced them, from Quentin Tarantino to Wes Anderson to Guy Ritchie. Other filmmakers were influenced and cited him as their inspiration for becoming actors or directors. One such actor being Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio became his new muse after years of working with De Niro. The first film was Being Games in New York. After years and years of being nominated for Best Director, he wouldn't win prior to 2007. Before that, he had the misfortune of losing every time to a actor turned director. In 1980, he would lose to Robert Redford for Ordinary People. In 1991, he would lose to Kevin Costner for Dancing with Wolves. In 2005, he would lose to Clint Eastwood for $1 Million Baby. Obviously, in hindsight, we can all say those movies that Scorsese made, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and The Aviator, have had a lasting impact than those other films that won. In 2007, he finally won for The Departed, a much-earned, much-deserved Oscar. Along with his success, he's dealt with controversy with some of his films, starting with Taxi Driver in '76. The controversy derived not only from the violence, but the depiction of an underage prostitute played by Jodie Foster, who was 14 at the time. Scorsese actually received death threats through mail because of what people perceived as his exploitation of Jodie Foster. In 1988, he received more controversy for his film The Last Temptation of Christ, which depicted a what-if scenario if Jesus was an ordinary person like us and could sin and struggle with things just as we did. Obviously, the church was against this, and it pretty much destroyed the film and the box office. It's known as the only film to be banned by Blockbuster when there was a Blockbuster. Even today, his most recent film, Wolf of Wall Street, had a lot of controversy due to what people consider glorification of greed and power of America. Despite this, you could see glimmers of a still young filmmaker in the making of Wolf of Wall Street. As one reviewer, Wesley Morris of Grantland, says, "This is the funniest American movie of the year, and the most dangerous Scorsese has been in more than 2 decades. The wolf isn't Belfort, who is the protagonist of Wolf of Wall Street. It's Big Bad Marty." Pretty much saying that despite being 71 years old, Scorsese still has the drive and strength of a young filmmaker, as if he was making Taxi Driver all over again. We are to believe that at Scorsese's age, his best years are behind him, but he continues to prove that idea wrong, pushing himself creatively, even when falling on his face, making mistakes, not making perfect films. This is what makes Scorsese great. This is what makes him one of the most groundbreaking directors of all time. He's not just a film treasure, but he's a national treasure, depicting the trueness of our reality in America. It may look glorified, it may look sexy, but in truth it's the ugliness, as you can see. Thank you. Was that a boo? Thank you, thanks.
Yeah, good job.
Thanks. I stumbled a couple times.
Okay.
Is it off?
It's a lot of such.
Yeah. I know I skipped a couple
It did
times.
record, right?
How long was that?